Good morning, guys. Today I wanted to talk to you about spirituality and animals, and namely horses. And this picture here was taken of me with one of my greatest teachers. Many people have said the same thing, that when they saw him, that he was not just a horse. And he was the one that began the journey of revealing what was beneath the horse suit. So, I think if you've listened to me before, you know that I'm a Reiki master. And that's how I started my journey. By having a traumatic incident happen in the family. Usually when you have a traumatic incident or midlife crisis or something like that, it usually causes a Kundalini awakening, and sometimes it can be kind of painful. And let me tell you, when I started this journey, I thought, I want to be a shaman. And the first thing you learn when you want to travel the road of becoming a shaman is you have to learn to live through the little deaths, which I did quite a few times. And, there was a point in time where I just said, enough, now I can't do this, but here I am today, teaching, hopefully, and writing my books about my experiences. And I just want to show you some pictures, because I want to tell you the story. This is what cancer can look like on horses, melanoma. This is underneath, right there in the armpit. And so the horse that I showed you, the one that I was giving a nice big kiss to, when I found him, well, actually, I dreamt about this horse my whole life. When I was a young child, I used to draw nothing but gray horses. I had gray horses with long legs. Now, this horse was, we were able to track the tattoo that was under his lip, and he was a retired racehorse that his bloodline went all the way back to Native Dancer. And if you know anything about Native Dancer and his personality, Lucky, which is his name, Lucky had that personality, and Lucky was huge. He was 17-1, so he was really a big horse. And this is what Lucky looked like when we first saw him. And actually, you can kind of see the cancer protruding underneath that armpit there. And that was when he was still at the previous owner's home, and he lived right down the street from me. Now, if you look, let's see, his left front, do you see how huge it is compared to his right front? His hoof was so bad, it would look like he was carrying around a rotted stump. I mean, it was, when I first saw him, my second middle daughter was the one that noticed that he was sick when she was babysitting across the street. And, we used to drive by and go, oh, look at him, he's so beautiful. And then my daughter got to know him and find out, this horse was really sick. And actually, the lady who owned him at the time rescued him from going on the slaughter. He was headed for slaughter. She watched him starve at some neighbors down the road, and then she just got tired of watching the poor horse starve, so she asked if she could buy him, and they said, no, we got $1,000 for him, he's going to slaughter. And then she sent one of her motorcycle friends that sort of leaned on them, so they let her buy him, and she was able to put some weight on him. And the vet came and said, yeah, he has cancer. And so after I graduated from my very first Reiki, it was Reiki level 1, and I found out from my daughter that he had cancer, I just had to go down the street, and it was like I had to help this poor horse. And she said, oh my gosh, she said, you do whatever it is you need to do, and whatever you need to do to help this poor horse, let me know. She said, I don't know anything about what you're doing, but you know, the vet cut off one of the melanomas, and all it did was bleed and come back. And so a friend of mine who also took the Reiki class decided to join me. I lived next to him, so I went once a day. And working with him, he was just a sweetheart. Oh, he was a sweetheart. He did have some sore spots, so we learned, you know, I got kicked once. I was overdoing a little bit with the energy work, but, you know, you learn. And we got results in a month. And see, I went there every day, and this horse, let me tell you, this horse smelled like death. And one of my other videos, I talk about this, you know, what this has to do with my Dragonhorse series, and how that book was inspired through this. And even the character in the story, Cheyenne, she does the same thing. She finds this big white horse that she has to help, and you know, he just smells like death. I mean, so when we found Lucky, he really hadn't decided if he was going to stay or not. And Lucky taught me compassion. That was the first thing he taught me, was compassion. And then he taught me perseverance, and he taught me to believe. And let me tell you, when I took Reiki, I wasn't really sure. I've had this deal where I wasn't worthy. Who am I to be out there doing this woo-woo stuff? I'm not, who am I? You know, put my hands on somebody and heal somebody. We got results in a month, and I'm not lying. And this is the honest to God truth. And so here are, I want to show you some before and after pictures. Okay, so I showed you that. That's that front hoof. Remember, I told you that one was so splayed out, and he was so lame, and he had so much inflammation. Well, a month later, you can see the bulb, the big bulb is gone. And what was transpiring is they were actually shriveling up. It was like the energy source that was keeping them alive. That's that black one that was underneath his armpit. See how weird it looks? The energy source was leaving, and it was dying, and they were falling off. And here's a really good example. And okay, so here's the one on his knee, how it started. And I would keep him wrapped, and every day you just never knew what you were going to open. You know, when you took the wrap up, you had no idea what was you were going to see. And so one day I took the wrap off, and that's what we got. It was like, it was just dying and shedding. It just shedding off. And then this is like very, very, looks very, a lot better. And so all of that, he got nice, good skin back, and it all healed except for that one on his foot. You know, that was a bugger. That one was a bugger because he was so active. I mean, come on, he was an ex-racehorse. And he was, you know, he was still lame, and it took 3 years of constant work with him before, 3 years, come on. This horse, the vet told this lady he had 8 months to live. And I'm talking about 3 years later. And we ended up buying him from that owner who saved him. And she had no clue about his history, you know. And so one day, after having him, I think it was a year later, no, it was 2 years later, because he was having intermittent lameness. And I just thought, oh, you know, I just need to get on this horse. And I just waited for him to give me the sign, and wait for him to tell me that, okay, yeah, I'm ready. You can get on me now. And that was the first time I was on a 17 one-hand horse. And when I got on him, he was a perfect gentleman. And actually, he knew more than I did at the time. So what does that have to do with spirituality? This horse was, we called him a wizard, a white wizard in a horse suit, because he taught me so much. Like I said, first he taught me about compassion, and you know, spirituality is all about compassion, empathy. He opened up the empath that was inside of me that had been suppressed, you know, from the agenda and, you know, everything that through their frequencies and through foods and everything, you know, everything they could do to keep what I call our natural abilities. We all have, we are natural empathics, all of us, but it's been suppressed and hidden away. So through working with him, I started to see that he was not just a horse. He was not just to be possessed. He was not to be rode hard and put up wet. Through him, I started to want to learn what was beneath these gentle, quiet giants, you know. And I learned that they reflect back to you who you are. So how you treat them is what you get in return. So it's a good gauge of how you are in your daily lives with interacting with other people and other animals. And, you know, so if you look at your horse as like a horse, it's just a horse, and I don't care if he loves me or not, you know, they're not going to return that. They're going to do what they need to do and not return anything extra. But he was something interesting. Even though he healed, it was like, I felt like, okay, I have another teacher coming, and he was subtly telling me, okay, you done all you could with me. This was like after 6 years. You know, it's time for you to learn from somebody else. And so the strange lameness thing in the vet was like, I don't know what it is. And so it's like, okay, all right, Lucky, I won't ride you anymore. And I wasn't a real big rider anyways. I was just more interested in the internal aspects, the spiritual aspects of the horse and what I could learn from them. And so it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm ready to rescue another horse. And lo and behold, here's a picture of Lucky. He looks so happy out in his pasture. Doesn't he look good? He looked so good back then. So I decided, okay, I'm going to buy another horse. I'm going to rescue another horse. Now, I went and looked at this horse, and this horse had a blanket on him, and this girl goes, oh yeah, I don't ride him that much. He does we have a hard time keeping weight on him, and I'm not sure why. And I was like, okay, you know, I can deal with that. You know, I'm all about rescuing and healing. And she took the blanket off of him, and I was just like, whoa, okay, this horse is really skinny. And I felt so bad. I made my daughter ride him because she wasn't even 5 feet tall, and I didn't want to get on him. And, you know, this poor skinny horse. And when he was in his cross ties, he was standing there, and we just connected when he looked at me, and he pawed the ground like, yes, please take me. I'm supposed to go with you. And Lucky sent you, which I totally believed. And so I brought him home, and it was funny because I put him in a stall next to Lucky, and it was like, you know, hey, what took you so long to get here? And his name was Sterling, and Sterling came in his stall, and I was standing in the barn, and he came in and he looked at me, and the first thing I said was, oh, he looks like a dragon. It's like there's a dragon inside of that horse suit. And I remember, you know, it's like I always want to know what's really inside these horse suits. And so many who believe that, you know, a lot of these animals are angels in disguise. You know, those of you who believe in the good dragons, the dragons that were born on this planet, that were here before humanity, the ones that were very spiritual dragons, well, that's what I saw. And here is I mean, I looked at his face and I was like, he's a dragon. And so through helping him, and he had one issue. He had his left ear, because he was an ex-race horse, you could not touch that ear. And I worked so hard, and it was to the point where, nope, I'm not even going to deal with that anymore. It's not that big a deal. Just get him a bridle that has, you know, the bridle with the ear part that you just right over the ear, so you don't have to go like that, you know. And he was fine with that. He was just fine. And then eventually I graduated to just, you know, one strap, and all I had to do was just, you know, click it, and he was fine. And this horse was so cool. If I sprayed him with the hose, he would stand underneath the water and he would dance back and forth, and he'd do a little pee off. He was just so cool. And he taught me gentleness too. He taught me compassion. And then he brought me into so Lucky was White Wizard. And White Wizard is a symbol of the purity of the soul. And he was such a pure soul. And Sterling, you know, taught me about the dragons. And here's a picture of the two of them together. Yeah, they look nice and dirty. It was a rainy day, but they were like joined at the hip, the two of them. And so after having Lucky for 7 years and him teaching me so much, it was just really strange, because I didn't realize that one of the true things that they were going to teach me about, you know, they say if you look up the symbol of a horse, it's a symbol of travel. Well, I didn't understand at that time that it had to do with traveling to the other world, traveling to the other side, and traveling to death and back, death and rebirth. The gypsies, that's why they breed black and white horses, because the black and white is symbology to them of the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. So after working and saving Lucky for 7 years, he actually saved us. It was his turn to leave. He taught me everything I needed to teach, and he knew that if he hadn't gone, I wouldn't got any more horses. And I kept saying, "Oh, we're going to grow old together," and that's not what it was all about. And so he had to leave, and it was devastating when he left, and I knew he was going to go. God, it was 14 years ago. But he was such a great teacher, and he's still around me. I still feel him. He's working with me from the other side. And the night before he left, well, we had an owl. Those of you who know owl omen, some of them say it's a bringer of death, and they had an owl that would sit on the roof, and they could hear him out there, and hoo-hoo, you know, and it's like, get away, get away. And that night I had called my other friend who was helping me she was part owner. I said, connect with Lucky, because there's something weird. He's been acting weird all week, and there's this dang owl outside my window. Well, the very next day he was gone. And she called me. I had my husband call her and say, Lucky's gone. And she came out, and then she said, I connected with him last night, and yeah, he told me he was ready to go. And but it was still hard. It's still, you know. And so I had Sterling. I had to take care of Sterling. You know, he was left. It's like, okay, Sterling, it's just the two of us. Now what do we do? And I was like, everybody's like, oh, you're going to rescue another horse. And it was like, no, I'm not. This is just too hard. And, you know, I had to go to the doctor because I thought I was having a heart attack. My heart was so broken. And 3 months later, you know, after, I should say 2 weeks after Lucky passed, I saw him in my dream, and my daughter saw him that very same night. And he came to me in a dream and he brought me to the other world. And you guys, you have no clue. I cannot possibly describe this world and the feeling of it and the beauty of it. And he brought me there, and then he had to bring me back right away. And I was so mad. And he's like, I have to bring you back because you would want to stay. And he was right. I wanted to stay there. It was just amazing. And the love, the feeling of love. And, but he says, there's another one out there for you. And I'm like, no way. I can't do this anymore. No way. And so the third month of his passing came along, and I started to get the itch. All right, Lucky. Okay. I'll rescue another one. And my husband, had been dealing with me and my sick horses, and he knew how much I loved Lucky. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. And it was really funny because this was when the second Lord of the Rings movie came out. I think Lucky passed right after or just before the Lord, and I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fanatic. I have to watch it by myself because all I do is cry during I've been there. I get Tolkien. I know exactly what he was writing about. And so, I was all about this Lord of the Rings stuff. And, and I told Lucky, I said, okay, Lucky, I said, if I'm supposed to get another horse and I know it's from you, I need some signs. And so, I'm looking on Dragonhorse.com, and up comes this beautiful black thoroughbred. All of my boys were thoroughbreds. And his name, when I read his name, I thought it said Aragorn. And I was like, oh, there you go. Lord of the Rings, Aragorn, king, it can't be much clearer than that. And so we went and looked at him, and we pulled in, we got to the gate of the farm, and it said Rohan Farms. And there you go, Rohan, another sign. And it's like, oh my gosh, I don't care what this horse looks like, or I know I'm supposed to get this horse. So we pull in there, and there's a bunch of horses. It was like a boarding place, and there's this little pen, and there's this big black horse laying in this pen. And my husband is like, oh my God, this horse can't even stand up. That's how sick he is. And I walked up there, and I had some carrots, and he's laying there, and he just kind of brings his head up a little bit to look. And then he gets up, and he was even bigger than Lucky. He was even bigger than Sterling. And it was like, I call them my lost boys. All three of them, they're like my lost boys. When I picked them up, they were like lost. And he was so lost. And the gal who had him was very, very nice, but he was so skinny. And I had to ride him, and I felt so bad. I didn't ride him very hard. And so I paid her full price, I paid $5,000 for a half-dead horse. This is what he looked like after I had him. And the reason he has the sheet on is because he was quite thin yet, and I just really didn't want the neighbors to go, oh my gosh, that horse is so thin. What? She's got all these half-dead horses out there. And so I brought him home and got him fattened up. He was difficult. But he taught me gentleness. The other ones taught me empathy and compassion. I was still learning how to change my ways of interacting. It was all about the healing stuff. But when the training stuff came along, it was like, when you're a horse trainer, everything is, all right, we got to show them. And he taught me that gentleness and kindness and a soft voice and a soft touch is all you need. And here's Sterling and Aragon running. Look at my, oh gosh, my fingernails are so disgusting. I build houses during the day. So I worked with him. I was doing acupressure. I was taking acupressure classes, and I was doing a lot of herbs with him because he was a chronic colicker. He was always colicking. And, I got to the point where I could tell right away when he was going to have an episode, and I would go out and, do energy work with him and then get him calmed, and then he'd be fine. And, so I had him for 2 years doing that. But when the farrier, and I had a great farrier who was really a nice, cool guy, when he would come to trim his feet, I never seen a horse stress out, and by watching him be so stressed, and he would just shake, and he would arch his head out, and he would stick his tongue out, and he'd, roll his head back and forth. And I learned that was showing that they were very under a lot of stress. And my farrier used to say, man, I don't know what they did to this horse, but they really messed him up. And, that's when I really started to learn that, they have feelings just like we do. And as I was learning that, I was growing, and the empath in me was just blossoming. And the more I opened up, the more I felt. The more I felt how they felt. It was like I was able to connect with them, and I could feel their wants and their needs and their desires. And riding was like, I didn't really want to ride anymore. I wanted to really connect with the horse world. And so back to Sterling, because he was Mr. Dragon, I had one of my circles was in full moon circle, and we did meditations to connect with the dragon realms. And then that's when I learned about, the dragons that we all have that are around that help us. And so each of them taught me something, in the spiritual world. Sterling one day totally surprised me. He was doing really, really well. In the middle of the night, I woke up and I had this horrible stomach ache. And I just didn't put two and two together. And I got up that morning, and I always feed very early. And I went out, and Sterling had colicked through the night, and he had never colicked before. And we had to let him. I had to help him cross. And because Lucky was dead already when I found him, I didn't have to deal with actually helping someone else cross. And I had to make that decision. And the vet was, and I could see that. I could tell that his spirit was already out of his body. And I just knew that the horse that was laying there, it was just his physical body. And the vet came and she said, yeah, his eyes are already sunken in. And so I decided to, make that decision and help him cross over. And, but I learned, I watched his eyes closely, and I could see his eyes change when his spirit, it was like his spirit was half in his body and half out, and it was pulling away. And then as soon as his spirit totally left his body, after his heart stopped, his eyes just, that it's like looking at eyes that have cataracts. And so that stuck with me for a very long time. So that was my way of knowing, when someone has left the spirit has left the body, and out for a while there, we were dealing with his physical body. His physical body was fighting to stay. Well, of course it is, because all them cells and all of that, it all knows that this is it. We're going to go back to Mother Earth. And so I let Aragon out, and Aragon went up to Sterling and said goodbye. And, you know, he was fine. He knew, you know, and so Aragon, I had him for 2 more years. And he just, as long as I worked with him, and great teachers, you know, whatever I wanted to learn, they were willing to help me with. And so I was learning all the herbs and what, you know, because of his colic, and I knew he had stomach issues, and, you know, the vets just could not pinpoint what it was. We figured it was probably ulcers. You know, horses, they get ulcers. They probably get them worse than people do because we force things on them, and we could care less. They're here for us. You know, I make my horse, you know, do things it doesn't want to do. I just beat it more to make it. And, you know, horses learn to live in acceptance. Some of them do. The really smart horses are the ones that end up in the slaughter plants, because you cannot reach a very smart horse through abusive means, because they will fight to the death. We have one, they're either flight horses or fight horses. And the very, very smart ones that the closed-minded people say are the dumb ones are the ones that are worth reaching. And I have one in my barn right now. And so Aragon was a flight horse. But everything that I want, acupressure, crystals, herbs. I mean, I had all kinds of herbs that I was learning to use, and you know, he was doing good, but he still wasn't 100%. And after 2 years, I knew that he was hanging around just for me. And I had learned so much for him. And all 3 of these horses would have been dead long before I got to them. And so one day, a friend came to get some old hay that I had, and he knew Aragon's story, and Aragon loved to lay on the horse manure. You have to have a big pile of horse manure, you know, it's nice and warm, and they like to lay on it, and it's like a bed for them. And Aragon was just laying in his horse manure bed, you know, and my friend says, he looks like he's ready to go. And, you know, and it just clicked. It was like, I gotta let him go. You're right. I gotta let him go, because as long as I'm working on him, he's hanging around. And that very night he colicked. And I heard him out there, and I knew what he was doing. And that morning I went out there, and he had ulcerated his eye, and so I called the vet, and we had to put him down. And it was funny because the vet is like, this was a different girl from the office, and she's like, you know, when we put them down, it's not very pleasant. And I told her, I says, oh no, he's ready to go. I said, he's going to go really fast. And I said, it'll be fine. And Sterling was the same way. And I laid next to him in the manure and put his head in my lap. And she stopped his heart, and he just left. And his ears, it was like just before he left his body. It was so cool because his eyes just perked up, or his ears perked up, and his eyes got really big, and he was like, he was looking ahead. And I'm sure I'm sure Sterling and Lucky was there. And it was like, he was like, oh, I'm out of here. And he was gone. And I just learned so much from that. And there's so many people out there that are afraid to face death. And helping these guys cross over is one of the greatest gifts we can give them. I had a friend back there who had a horse for 34 years. She raised that horse from a baby. She kept it for 34 years. And when that horse finally went down and needed help crossing, she didn't want to deal with it. And she is a Christian. She didn't want to deal with it. So she had a friend. The horse couldn't even stand. She had a friend take that horse to slaughter. You know, all the years that that horse gave her, and that was the thanks that she gave that horse in return. You know, I could never do that. Oh, I couldn't put that horse down in my backyard. Oh my gosh. What kind of mentality is that? Coward. And, you know, she couldn't even follow what she preached. That's the part that makes me mad. And I know so many stories about that, where you know, death is just like, you know, these people are so asleep. You can tell the sheeple, and you can tell the people who are so asleep because they're afraid of death. And, you know, when I put all three of these horses in my story, my dragon horse story, and I'm finishing up on the last installment, it's called Talion. These horses, I write about how they cross over and how it's not the end and how it works in our world. But because we are so asleep, we cannot see the veil. We are disconnected from our empathic self. We are controlled, we are programmed. We don't want to show any fear. Another story, a so-called friend decided to bring her horse up. I just got Ciara, the horse that I have now. I might have to backtrack. But first, crystals. Remember I told you I worked with crystals and all this stuff with my boys, and this was the crystal this is an amethyst. This is the crystal that I had in Lucky's water tank. And it was really interesting because Lucky and Sterling had their own pens, and they were side by side. And Sterling would lean over the fence and drink out of Lucky's water because he liked Lucky's crystal. And the crystal changed the frequency of that water. And so I had to get Sterling his own amethyst crystal, and then he was happy, and then he was fine. So people use crystals in their water. They love it. It'll change the molecular structure of that water. Back to Ciara. I lost my train of thought. See, I do this all the time. I have so many things going on in my head. But Ciara, when I got her, I was finishing up on the very first Dragonhorse book. And there was a horse in this story that belonged to Cheyenne. You know, that she's the heroine of my story, the young heroine coming of age. And this horse was so cool. I never had an Arab, and this horse was a fiery little Arab, and she had such personality, and Cheyenne allowed her personality to shine through. And when I wrote about them and how they got along, and her name was Freya in the story, the horse that I'm talking about, and the way Cheyenne and Freya interacted, it was so cool, and I just fell in love with this horse that I was writing about. And you know, this was like 10 years now. Was 10 years after Lucky had passed, and I no longer had Aragon. I didn't have any of them, and I had just I didn't have any horses at the time. I was in between horses. I'd just sent my big Percher on Thoroughbred down to my sister because we had moved up in the mountains, and he hated it because a mountain lion came through and chased him through all of my fences, and he got cut really bad. And ever since then, he just hated it up there. And we were up there in the mountains, let me tell you. And so I cried for a month and finally relented and took him down to the Front Range, gave him to my sister, and he loved it in the arena, and he loved it in the indoor arena. He was never a trail horse. And so I just sacrificed and gave him up after having him for 8 years. I raised him from a baby. But I knew I had to let him go. Where I was, he just hated. And so I didn't have a horse at the time. And I was just finishing up on the Dragonhorse book, and I was just, writing that book. I just kept thinking, God, that little horse. And I had all these big horses, big, huge horses all the time. And it was like, that little horse is so cool. I would love to have her, but how do you have her when you just wrote about her in the book, And so here we go, manifesting, spirituality and manifesting. How do you manifest? And I had no idea that I already patched into this little horse. And that's why I was writing about her, because she was already there. Because remember what I said before about the energy? There is no space between all of us. We are all one. And I'm just so good in patching into the horse nation. And so one day we were going down the road, and my husband was arguing with me, and he was saying, he says, you need another horse. And I'm like, no, I don't. I was still getting over giving up Winter. His name was Winter. I named him after Winter the Wizard. And Winter was a big bumbling wizard too. And I was like, no, I just can't go there. He goes, yeah, you need a horse. He says, why don't you get a horse that is already been up in the mountains and is not afraid? You're in a different location now. Some horses don't like certain areas. It's what they're used to. And I was like, no. And we're going down the road, and all of a sudden here's two people, and they're trail riding. And this is like, we lived up 6 miles up a BLM road. So we had a lot of people that would trail ride or ride their ATVs or whatever. And so we stopped so they could go by. And my husband leans out the window and says, hey, anybody that has any horses for sale? And I'm like, shut up. And I'm not even looking, And he's like, golly, he says, look at that horse. Because they said, yeah, matter of fact, this one is for sale. And my husband's like, get out there and look at that horse. She's beautiful. And the last time I had a mare was when I was in 7th grade. And so I go, and he's like, get out there. And the people are just standing there. So I go out, and she was gorgeous. It was like, oh my gosh, this is Freya standing right in front of me. But she was very, very thin. I looked at her legs, and, compared to my Percher and Thoroughbred, here's his legs and here's hers. But she was just exquisite. She was gorgeous. And, I looked at her a little bit, and I'm like, okay, thanks for letting me see her. And they're like, yeah, if you want to come try her out. And we exchanged information. Sure. And I was just like, I don't know, Well, then come find out, this woman that I made friends with, who used to walk her dogs up and down our road, like I said, people do. I became friends with her, and she had 2 older horses, and she didn't know what she was going to do with her horses, and she really didn't want them. And then when she found that I was thinking of getting another horse, she was like, well, maybe I'll keep my horses and we'll trail ride. And I said, hey, that's cool. I'm going to go look at this horse. Well, she knew those people. She goes, I know those people. She says, a matter of fact, we're all going on a trail ride. She says, why don't you ride? Her name was Ciara. Why don't you ride Ciara on that trail ride? So cool. So long story short, we go out there. It was a horrible, terrible day. It was so windy. But the night before that trail ride, see, through my other horses, I've learned that you can talk to them, you can patch into them, even though you're not standing next to them. So I decided to patch in with Ciara and see what she had to say. And I said to her, okay, I've been writing about you, and I think you are the horse that I wrote about in my Dragonhorse book. And I said, would you please give me a sign if I'm correct and that we are supposed to be together? And see here, I'm still not totally sold on getting another horse. I've had so much pain in the past, and I was free, didn't have any more horses, and I wasn't going to go through any more pain, and that was so cool, okay? But the universe always has something else planned. you know, your subconscious and your higher self is saying something differently. So in talking to her the night before, she shows me where when I meet her, she's going to put her forehead into my hand, into the palm of my hand. And I was like, okay, that'll be the sign. Cool. So the next morning, the weather was so bad, we didn't even seem like we were going to be able to do this. And I was a little nervous, you know, riding this fire little Arab. She was actually a national show horse, very well bred, came from a very fancy farm. She was half saddlebred and half Arab. She was trained for show. And then these long distance people bought her because they thought she was going to, you know, win ribbons when they did, you know, all this long distance riding, which I could obviously see she didn't want to do that. So I was just like, oh, I don't know. I was conflicted. And so meet my friend, we trailer her horse down, and there's Ciara. And she's tied to the trailer. Her nose is right to the trailer. And I didn't even think anything of it. All the other horses were just kind of, you know, they had a long loop, but she was tied right to the trailer. She couldn't even move. And so the owner came up and grabbed her and held her really tight and untied her. And Ciara wiggled from her. And the first thing she did when I went up to pet her was she put her head right into my hand. And I totally forgot about the sign. And when she put her forehead into my hand, I was like, oh my gosh. So yes, everything that I've been thinking is true. And so we had a really good trail ride. A couple people fell off. One horse colicked. A couple mules kept wanting to lay down. It was one of those fun trail rides, okay? And Ciara and I were fine. We were just fine. And the end of the trail ride, after the poor woman who was 72 years old fell off for the third time because her horse was colicking and nobody knew it, we all decided, you know what? We're all going to hike. We're going to hike back because it was such a windy, nasty day. And so Ciara apparently was friends with one of the big mules, and the guy ran ahead with his mule to go get the horse trailer to come back and be able to drive the elderly woman because she couldn't walk. And so I was left walking with Ciara, and when we got back, the owner was there, and she was like, oh my gosh, she says, how is Ciara? She says, she cannot be separate from her mule. And I was like, no, she was fine. She was great. And she's like, oh, good. Oh, good, good, good. So she's like, how did you like her? And I said, well, considering what went out of the trail ride, I loved her. And so she allowed me, I said, I'm still out. I said, could I take her home for 2 weeks? I'll pay for her, but could I take her home for 2 weeks on a trial basis and see if this was really true? So here I am still thinking, oh, you know, I don't believe in all this stuff yet, you know, still after all these years. And so I get her home. My friend and I, we pick her up and get her home. And then my friend decided she's going to bring her elderly horse, and we were going to trail ride up because where I was at the time, it was beautiful trail riding. And so I bring Ciara home. And the first day I go to saddle her up and ride her, I couldn't even get near her. And now I know why they had her tied up so tight to the horse trailer. And it was just like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with this horse? And I could feel her energy. And I started to bawl because she was so frustrated. She was so scared. She didn't really know what I was really going to do, even though she knew that she was supposed to come and be with me. And she jigged back and forth, and I couldn't, and she would do the same thing the Aragon did, arch her neck out and turn her head and stick her tongue out. And she was just crazy. And she would turn around, and if I was trying to brush her, she would turn around and bite at me, and she would kick me. And so it was like, whoa, 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 whoa. We need to start from day one, or start from the beginning, because I just knew this horse had been beat on. And I could feel her pain. She had saddle, white hairs where the saddle was, and I could just feel the pain in her back. Her whole body was in pain. And this horse was only 850 pounds. Yes, she wasn't a very big horse, but she should have been at least 980 pounds. So she was very underweight. And I just remember, you know, when the one time when she reached around to bite me, most people's reactions are to hit and, you know, beat on them. And something in my head made me go, ah, ah. And as soon as she turned around to bite me, I put my hand out and I just said, stop, in a very calm voice. And she just stopped and she just looked at me like, no, you're supposed to whip the shit out of me is what you're supposed to do. And I worked with her for 4 months, Reiki, and then I had my vet come, and at the end, when she was doing so much better, I could brush her, I could pick up her feet. I mean, I could do anything with her. We went out and did all kinds of things with a tarp and just weird things. And my farrier came, and because he used to do my other horses, and he's like, oh my gosh, I know this horse. He said, the other farrier, Harry so-and-so, he hated this horse. This horse was dangerous. And he goes, I can't believe this horse. She is a sweetheart. She didn't give him any problem. I mean, because she learned to trust me. And she knew I wasn't like all these other people. So I grew spiritually because of that. I opened up to a new way of looking at these horses and seeing them for what they truly are, and recognizing their pain and their sorrows. And yeah, maybe they can't come out and say, hey, you know what happened to me the other day? My best friend colicked and died, and they just hauled it away. And it was devastating to me, and nobody cared. They didn't even let me say goodbye, you know? And so I learned to really connect and look within, and it's connecting to Gaia. And this is what I always have. This is what I keep saying. These animals are connected to Gaia. And in connecting with them, it's connecting with her. And so she got to be she just really improved 100%. And I was talking to that gal one day who we went, she knew the people that previously owned Ciara. And, you know, she said, that day that we went and we rode, you know, we did the trail ride together. Didn't you see the owner? I'm not going to say her name. Didn't you see the owner whipping the shit out of her? She whipped her so much. She had backed up to the highway. And the only reason she stopped whipping her was because she was on the highway. And I was like, no, I didn't see that at all. And it's because I wasn't supposed to see that. Because if I would have saw that, I would have been programmed, oh my gosh, this horse is crazy. Look at, you know, I probably would, you know, maybe I wouldn't have rode her. I don't know, but I know I wasn't supposed to see that. And I was like, oh my gosh. And she also told me, that horse that you're now riding, they sent her to Arizona to a big time trainer, and she almost killed that trainer. And so they sent the horse back. And so, you know, what you did with her, she says, I don't know what you've done with her. It's like magic. And it is magic, because I believe in it. And this is what these horses have been teaching me, that, you know, we have to go back to our empathic selves. We have to feel their energy. We have to feel what they're feeling. We have to listen. And we have to, you know, all of our clairs, you know, clairsentience, being just knowing and feeling what they're feeling, are, you know, the empathy within ourselves. We learn, and it you know, it just really makes me so mad when people say, Oh, it's just a dog. Oh, it's just a horse. Oh, yeah. Oh, oh, I couldn't put my horse down. I just sent it to slaughter. They're really, that's why they're here, to help us learn, help us remember who we truly are. And all of these people are just missing. They've missed the memo. They didn't get on the bus. They were too late for the train. And so they're all living in this negative attitude and in this fear-based attitude, and they're afraid of death and life and rebirth. And, so this is what I'm trying to tell you, with animals. And thank God to those activists that are out there fighting for animal rights. Because when we start opening up to this, it causes all of us to grow in awareness. And the more we grow, the further we go, and the greater our life is. We see more joy in the world. And, just by having a bluebird stop on the fence and sing its beautiful song to you and you getting it, I mean, that is so cool. So I just, I wanted to say to you about this woman that, brought her horse over with me so she could ride. Now, I need to say that this woman decided long ago she didn't want these horses anymore. They were already old. The horse she brought to ride with me was 23 years old, and he was swayback, but he was still the same guy underneath that skin. And she was complaining that, oh, he's such trouble. Every time I bring him somewhere, he always gets hurt. He always gets caught in the fence. It always causes me vet bills, blah, 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 blah. So she was connected to the negative side of this horse. And she had already decided that she was done with him. And he was the coolest horse. And one morning I woke up and he was out there limping in the pasture. And I called her at work that morning, and his leg was not broken. I've seen broken legs before. I've been with horses, and I know how painful and know how they react, and it's horrible. And he was, because he was old, he was just like, he was lame. I had a horse with stone bruises that was more lame than he was, okay? Well, she was like, well, if you don't think it's that bad, she says, I don't want to come out there. She said, I'm going to a party tonight. So she went to the party that night, and the next morning I went out there, and because he was old and he had been hobbling around, he was laying down at the time, and Sierra was laying right next to him, and these two loved each other. And she was right next to him. And I called her and I said, well, he's laying down today. And she's like, oh, God damn it, I'm going to call the vet. And I knew I could just hear her. I don't give a shit what it is. I'm putting that horse down. He's 23 years old. He's nothing but trouble. And so I could hear it. I could hear it, you guys. I knew exactly what was going to happen. That vet gets up there. He don't even touch the horse. Before he even goes down, he goes, that horse got a broken leg. That horse kicked him. And I was just like, what? I was not prepared for that. So she's like, well, we got to put him down. We got to put him down. I can't do it. Oh, I can't do it. Because she was feeling guilty. And I said, you know what? I'll do it. I'll be with him. Well, this vet didn't believe in either that or she didn't want to pay for it. This vet did not believe in putting them to sleep. See, my horses I put to sleep. And then when they're sleeping, then we inject right into the heart and then they stop. No. I was holding the horse's head. He shoved the drug, the euthanasia drug, right in his vein. And then he stands up and he's talking to this woman's husband. He's going, oh yeah, pretty soon he's going to start making weird noises. We call that the death rattle. And I was just like, I wanted to get up and punch this guy right in the nose, And so I'm holding this poor horse, and he's doing exactly what he's saying. This horse is dying in my hand. And I it was just like, there I go. I lost faith in humanity again. And I just couldn't believe it. So we buried him on our land, and it just bothered me. It just bothered me and bothered me and bothered me. And it was spring. It was like the end of April. And I'm up there in the mountains. You know, we have rocks and gravel, and we don't grow flowers. There's no flowers that grow up there just because of our weather. And one morning I get up and I look in his old pen, and right in the middle of his pen, which is nothing but dirt, it's a horse pen, his little run, was an iris. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is a sign. And I took pictures of it. Oh, I wish I have them somewhere. But up there in the mountains, irises do not grow. I don't plant irises. And it was right in his horse pen. And so I knew that was a sign that be at peace. I'm at peace. Everything is okay. And I know the owner, she's probably still I don't know if she's dealing with it today or if she learned anything from it. So there was, so there you go, life, death, and rebirth. I was with him in death, and he sent me a sign of, I'm not dead. It's all okay. It's all okay. Where I'm at, it's okay. You don't have to worry about it. You did what you need to do. And so, so this is where I'm at with horses. And this is why I write about this stuff in my books. And, I paint. This is one of my, let's see, it's kind of scary. It's a big painting I did. And this was after Lucky and Sterling were gone. And I just had to do this watercolor. And there I am standing in front of these two spiritual beings. But anyways, I'm probably getting in very lengthy here. But anyways, spiritual growth. I don't know how these people who are saying they're animal lovers, but then they turn around and treat their animals poorly. They turn around and they eat animals. They don't give a rip. They don't give a crap how they're raised, the pain and the sorrow and the conditions and the abuse, and then the day of their death, and how nobody cares enough to do it in a humane manner. Nobody's there to connect them with those that are on the other side that can help them cross. These animals are scared. They're in pain. They don't know why they're being treated this way. They don't know why there's so much hate around them. They are here to help us connect with our empathic self. Because if this world was full of all empaths, there wouldn't be war. There wouldn't be hate. We wouldn't be destroying our planet. We couldn't bear to do this because we would feel it ourselves. And the more I connect with my empathic self, the easier I feel the pain of the natural realm. And some of the things I see, it instantly hurts my heart. And I know that is my connection with Gaia, to Gaia. And I can feel her heart. And I can feel how it's breaking. And I know why she had to make the choice that she had to make and say enough is enough. And I'm splitting in two. And I'm leaving my third density body behind with those who do not want to reconnect to their empathic selves. And they will have a limited amount of time to wake up. And if they don't, they get to go back to the goddess, source, whatever you want to call it, and start all over again. When the rest of us are learning about this new world, and we get to move forward and we get to move upward. We've graduated. How cool is that? So, I guess that's all I got to say today, guys. Think before you act when it comes to the natural realms. When you go to the grocery store and you're buying that steak or chicken or fish or whatever, pork, oh gosh, don't even think about what you are allowing to happen and what you are supporting. You know, to give all that up, an empathic person, once you open to your empathy, it is so easy to give all that up. Because when you look at that meat, that animal, you can see how it was treated. You can feel the energy that is still imbued in that meat. And those of us who are sensitive to that now, they see the putrefaction. They see the sorrow, and they see the why me, what did I do, you know, the worst, the bottom of the pit of sorrow. They see it, they feel it. They cannot go there. I cannot go there anymore. And so for those of you who say, I'm an animal lover, well, you know, how much of an animal lover are you? You know, stop justifying just stop justifying, you know, oh, I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going to pick up some barbecued ribs. You know, it's simple as changing the name. You're not picking up barbecued ribs. You're picking up the ribs from a murdered pig. You know, and that's another thing. I don't even know if anybody's still with me anymore at the end of this video, but all these people that are like, they're so mad about how the aliens are treating us. Oh, we're food for the aliens. Oh, you know, all these parasites sucking off of our energies, you know, and controlling our mind. And oh, well, you know, when you treat other beings like you treat them, like the aliens are treating you, why would it be any different for you? You know, why would you think you need to be treated any differently if you yourself cannot move into a place of empathy? You know, we need to teach our children. Our children are already born with empathy, but because how we raise them and program them, and the vaccines and the nasty food that we put into them, we start to block that. We start to veil that. And so we need to allow these children, you know, to grow up the way that they want to grow up. And when they say, I don't want to eat that, you have to allow that. You have to honor that. If you can't do that, at least let your children do that. So anyways, pick up my books, Dragonhorse and Seeker of the Forgotten Knowledge. Samaya is the second one. Talion is the third one coming on. Talion, it took me a while to get that one done, because that's actually about what is going on. Even though it's a fantasy setting, it's about what's going on now after the shift, after all these shifts we're going through, after those who have made it to the next world. What's it like? What do you do when you get to a world like that? Is there still the balance of good and bad? I mean, what do people do when they go to that world? Are they just bored? Or what happens to the people that are left behind on the 3D earth? Remember, the clock is ticking for them. And that's what I'm going to go into. What would it be like to stay on 3D earth when the sands of the hourglass is running out, and that part of Gaia is going to turn to stardust? What would that be like to be on that planet? And do you get a second chance? Do you still get a chance to move up? So anyways, I'm done. See you later. And love everybody. So we'll just talk to you in a week and a half? I don't know. Anyways, adios.